Hello and welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Robert Tan. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. The Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are a set of 17 global targets adopted by the United Nations in 2015. They aim to end poverty, reduce inequality, protect the planet, and promote prosperity for all by 2030. But while they sound ambitious, the real question is, how do these goals impact the daily lives of Filipinos, and what role do business, government, and society play in making them happen? And joining us today on Follow the Money is Professor Richard Cruz from the Asian Institute of Management. He's not only a seasoned educator, but also the driving force behind Shift Consulting, a firm helping organizations turn big ideas like sustainability into practical, measurable strategies. And today we dive deep into how the SDGs aren't shaping our future. Good afternoon, Professor Richard. Thank you for joining us here on Follow the Money.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Professor, let's start this off. Let's start with the basics. Now, why should the average Filipino care about the SDGs, and what's the real connection between these goals and everyday life in the Philippines?
Okay, so the SDGs might have started with the United Nations, but I think what all Filipinos need to understand is that the SDGs are something that affects us very personally, in a concrete way, on a daily basis. Okay, so our life experiences, wherever we are in the Philippines, are directly impacted by the activities around how these SDGs are developing. So, you can talk about a mother worried about the education of her child. And, there's a lot of efforts, given the performance of the Philippines in education. There's a lot of efforts, not just in the Philippines, but in the world, globally, aligned around quality education, to uplift systems of education everywhere, including the Philippines. So I think we should not think of it as something foreign. No? SDGs are not something invented somewhere else, ratified somewhere, and then being imposed on the Filipinos. No, I think that's the wrong way to think about it. Even though they were crafted maybe in somewhere outside of the Philippines, these goals should be internalized and understood from our personal daily experiences.
Now, Professor, when we look at these SDGs, you mentioned it's not only for companies, businesses, or governments. You're saying that it's also part and parcel of how we as individuals go on about our daily lives. Now, how does that affect this process now? So it's not only companies, but you say we also have to be part of this.
Yeah. So if you think about individuals, we have needs, we have a hierarchy of needs. And to satisfy these needs, we need products, we need services. So there are companies that are designed, that are built to develop these products and services. And as consumers, it's important for us to understand how these products and services were designed, produced, delivered. And they need to understand the impact of that process. And they have to make a decision, right? Will they give the money that they're going to spend on a product to a company that cares about the environment or cares about their workers? Or are they going to spend the money and buy products and support companies that are trying to do this very difficult challenge of building a model that's more sustainable? So from a demand point of view, as individuals, as consumers, we need to understand deeply what kind of products are we consuming. And of course, on the supply side, the companies, the local government units, the government agencies, they know that they really need to reshape a lot of these value chains. They need to reshape how products are designed. They need to reshape the relationships with employees. So it's not just an issue in business, but it's also an issue about the consumer, and knowing that if you want a better environment, then you have to support also businesses that are trying to make that happen.
So for this to work, Professor, you're saying it has to be a two-way street.
It has to be a whole of country, whole of world approach, right? I mean, if we continue to put in money and invest resources or buy products from companies that have terrible negative impacts, right? Then we're just sustaining these companies, and we're kind of just rewarding them for not thinking sustainably. We want to incentivize business leaders, entrepreneurs. There's a lot of social entrepreneurs that are very maybe idealistic or they're very visionary. They want to create restaurants or small hotels or small businesses, small service businesses, small manufacturing businesses that are sustainable. But the problem with these these small entrepreneurs is that they have to be profitable as well, right? So let's reward, let's incentivize these young entrepreneurs who want to be more sustainable by supporting them, right? So the consumers have to be aware, and they have to differentiate.
Now, Professor, looking at these 17 goals, where do you see the Philippines making meaningful progress, and where are we clearly lagging behind?
Okay. So if you look at the Philippine report in terms of their SDG progress against their commitments, the first thing we can say is the Philippines is better off now than it was 10 years ago. Okay, so that's the first one. But right now, I would say that out of the 17 goals based on the report, there's only one goal that seems to be on target based on the commitments the Philippine government made, and that's SDG 12 in relation to sustainable consumption. It has a lot to do with issues like circular economy, packaging, ocean waste, etc. But for the remaining 16, it seems like right now we're not on track to hit the commitments. About 1/3 of the goals are positively trending. There's another 1/3 of the goals that are flat, and then there's another 1/3 of the goals that are actually sort of declining in terms of performance. So it's a mixed bag. Of course, there are many factors, but I think it's clear that if we do want to hit the goal, then we really have to kind of move the needle faster.
But can we realistically balance sustainability and economic growth in high-impact sectors? Let's look at mining, tourism, or infrastructure, or are we still stuck in an outdated development mindset?
Yeah, I think of course we can accelerate sustainable development. The thing about sustainable development as a definition is that it's quite broad, right? So it can move from something as simple as reducing negative impact is already considered sustainable, moving to net zero, moving to like restorative models, moving to regenerative models, right? So I think if you just ask, can we become more sustainable? Definitely yes. If we talk about mining, I think the mining companies clearly recognize that if they want to have the license to operate their business to continue, if the shareholders want long-term returns, then they have to be a good citizen, right? They have to really take care of not just the community around where they mine, but they really have to develop more innovation in terms of how to protect the environment, reduce the damage of their processes as much as possible, reduce their ability to restore the mines. So I've seen firsthand pockets of sort of innovation and excellence in mining companies. Of course, I'm not going to generalize and say that all of them are equally conscious about their sustainability. Same thing in tourism, right? We know that tourism also has caused a lot of damage. I mean, we remember Boracay was closed for a period of time, and you can argue that the tourism business model actually had a very negative impact on that pristine ecosystem.
Yes.
But we do see, on the other hand, tourism being the lead in terms of generating awareness for sustainability. So is the question, can we do it? Yes. In my experience, the biggest constraint or the highest leverage point is we really need to have a heart-to-heart talk with the leaders of these organizations. And I guess they have to be a little bit more open in terms of explaining to everybody else what their concerns might be in terms of trying to become more sustainable. And then collectively try to innovate and find solutions. I believe that if shareholders know that there's a way to continue to be profitable, but to be more positively impactful and sustainable, I think their fear that they might lose the profit to be more profitable might decrease, and it might open up these businesses to more sustainable activities.
Professor, a while ago you were mentioning that when we talk about sustainable development goals, the SDG 17, that it shouldn't sound foreign, especially here in the Philippines. Now, how much of an awareness do we have here in the Philippines about the SDGs? And when we look at that, how do we translate it now into something more tangible for small businesses and local communities? So it's not just a global agenda, but a local reality here in our country.
Okay. So, if you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, you would probably notice that their first response is, how do I save money? How do I cut costs? right? So I believe this cost-cutting mindset, this tipid mindset, is actually very well aligned with sustainability principles in general, right? We want to reduce waste. We want to plan our activities in a better way, use technology in a better way to reduce waste, right? So I think many of the principles are actually quite aligned. For example, like many businesses want to build a strong brand for their business, right? But which group of customers will admire a brand if they know that the brand is actually damaging the environment or exploiting people? So, being nice to the environment and being good to your people is a direct driver of developing
So even the
brand.
consumers now, Professor, are becoming more conscious about this?
I think so. I think, when you look at how, the transparency that social media has provided in terms of pointing out certain events that might indicate some kind of maybe unsustainable or, some undesirable behavior. I think there's a real penalty for these companies to be exposed in such a way. So, and how they respond, right? So some companies will respond positively to negative feedback. Other companies might ignore it. So, but we just have to have an understanding that sustainability is not an endpoint, right? It's a journey. And you may not be hitting all of the right buttons right now, but I think what's important for a lot of customers is that they know that you care about these things and that you're really doing your best to innovate and find the right solution, even if you make a mistake, right? Sorry, we tried. But we have to sort of bring it down to the level of a personal relationship rather than some template in some framework, etc.
Okay, Professor, a lot of learnings, still much to discuss. We're just getting warmed up. Follow the Money returns after short break. You're still watching Follow the Money. Still with us is Professor Richard Anthony Cruz, adjunct faculty at the Asian Institute of Management and co-founder of Shift Consulting, as we discuss why the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, matter to everyday Filipino. Now, Professor, let's look at now what kind of support does the SDGs have in terms of helping, let's say, the local companies. Now, what will it take, let's say, for banks, investors, financial institutions to move from, let's say, what we call lip service to a true impact investing that supports sustainable innovation?
Okay, so I'm gonna say there are real challenges. So it's maybe not lip service, right? I mean, they're really trying to find a more sustainable portfolio. Like they want to invest in more sustainable businesses. But capital markets is a platform. It's a two-sided market. No? So there are investors and then there are investees. Okay. So the banks are holding the money of investors. They're managing the funds of investors, retirees, etc. And they have a commitment to make some return for the investors. So at the same time, they want to make sure that their money is used as some kind of incentive to companies that are actually behaving in a way that is sustainable for everybody. So the banks, I think, the commitment is there. Maybe part of the challenge is that there are not enough interesting, sizable investments that are sustainability based that can also deliver the returns that the bankers are looking for to their clients. So it's a very complex sort of system. I try to have empathy for everybody, although maybe some people don't always deserve the empathy, but I try to start with empathy. But clearly to me, we need to transform the businesses. We need to help them make the business case to invest in more sustainability projects. Like whether it's a big infrastructure project that's more resilient, more sustainable, or energy related, or to invest in new business models in education, technology, etc. We have to encourage companies to make the big investment in things that are more sustainable, and then the banks will come in and help finance that. So I think that's how I see it from my experience. I think the banks are kind of ready to fund, but the companies internally, they need more proof or evidence that these projects that they want to invest in can give the return. And at the same time, these sustainable impacts are also not very certain.
Yes.
So we don't really know what the impact to the environment and the social. So we really have to move faster in terms of understanding the trade-offs between economic returns
And profit.
and profits, the risk, the high
Yeah.
risk, the low risk.
Yes.
So, it's there. I think the infrastructure is there.
But not enough yet. Not enough.
Yeah, and I think maybe more education also on the business side in terms of like understanding how the banks can enable. To me, it's clear, like the banks have negative investments. Like they will not invest in energy projects that have negative impact.
Yeah.
So that's clear already. Insurance companies will not insure power plants that are, giving off a lot of CO2 emissions, right? So we can see
Yes.
those things, yeah.
Now, Professor, if we look at, let's say, startup businesses, those who want to go into business, what would you say to those who have another school of thought saying that if they do follow the SDGs, these goals, it's actually more capital intensive and more expensive when they do want to, even if they want to, it's expensive. What do you say to those?
I think I'll use tourism as an example. Okay, tourism industry is being relied upon to deliver a lot of growth in the future, and I think a lot of news has come out recently that a lot of the businesses are also trying to get into that, right? And if you talk to the Department of Tourism, they're really talking about having more sustainable tourism business models. Okay, so it's also about understanding the long term from a shareholder point of view, right? What are you after? Are you just after short-term profit?
Or long-term?
Or are you really trying to build a business that can thrive in the long term and give you the opportunity to earn long-term returns, right? So, when you talk about capital assets, these are by nature long-term assets. So, maybe this notion about, going into business is all about getting rich quick.
Yes.
And then we're just focused on the short-term profit and maybe I'll just flip it or something. I mean, that's one model. But those that are looking at the long term, I think they can make the business case for a long term.
Now, looking at that, Professor, being a professor yourself, as someone who has been mentoring young entrepreneurs, how do you guide them to build a business that are scalable, but also, again, socially responsible and value-based?
Yeah, I think, first of all, with entrepreneurs, what I'd like to do with them is like clarify their purpose, right? Because ultimately at their level, they have to make certain decisions like, how are we going to relate with the investors? How are we going to relate with our customers? How are we going to relate with our employees? How are we going to relate with our suppliers, right? So, if your relationship towards everybody is you're trying to extract the maximum amount of profit from every relationship, then maybe that person is not going to be a kind of like a social entrepreneur or sustainability-focused entrepreneur. So, but those who understand that, I'm trying to build mutually beneficial relationships with all the different stakeholders. I'm not trying to extract the most out of labor, or I'm not trying to extract the most from my supply chain.
On the long term, that's much better.
So, there's an understanding that, they're in for the long haul, right? And these relationships, these are the relationships that possibly can withstand the uncertainties. Because you know what happens now, right? If your employee branding is weak and something happens to the company, all your employees can walk out the door tomorrow, right? So, these are questions. Yeah.
Professor, just quick, tell us a little bit about Shift Consulting and how exactly are you helping companies align their operations in line with the SDGs?
Yeah, so we started a company recently, Shift Consulting. It's basically a response to our recognition that the old way of thinking about how businesses are built needs to be shifted. Okay, the leadership of companies, their mental model has to be shifted. So our primary focus, our high impact leverage point here actually is if we believe that if we can change the mental model of board, CEOs, senior managers, then they can make those big decisions in terms of like investment.
That will have great impact.
That will have great impact on the outcomes, right? So we're looking for a place where we can sort of like move the needle in a big way.
That's good. Professor, a lot of insights on that, a lot of learnings in terms of how SDGs can help businesses, and not only on the local scale, but also globally. But let's now go to the fun part. Let's go to the rapid fire questions. Just answer yes or no, Professor. You don't have to explain your answer. Let's start with this. Do you believe most corporations would rather look good on paper than actually go green?
Yes.
Have you ever ghosted a meeting because it lacked purpose or passion?
Most definitely, yes.
Okay. Is sustainability sexier when it's tied to innovation and profit?
Much sexier.
Now, is saving the planet your kind of ultimate love affair?
Most definitely.
Ever been attracted to someone because of their green lifestyle?
I have not thought about that yet.
Ayun, Professor married. Okay. Ever caught yourself blushing while talking about climate change with someone?
Yes.
Is saving the planet your kind of sexy challenge?
Yes.
And finally, Professor, complete the sentence. Money is the root of all
Possibility.
That's great. Professor, thank you for joining us here at Follow the Money. A lot of insights, being educated about SDGs, getting awareness, especially that now we know it's a two-way street. It has to be the consumer, the individual, and also the companies. Thank you,
Robert. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Richard Anthony Cruz, for joining us on Follow the Money. Your insights on the SDGs showed how global goals can create local impact. Turning global goals into local action is now urgent, as expressed by the director of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Jeffrey Sachs. He says the SDGs are not utopian. They are attainable and they are necessary for the survival of our civilization. And that's it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Robert San. Thanks for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.